questions for us to. Thank you. Someone recorded for me. Thank you. So please put your questions in the chat at any time during the event, and Miranda will make sure that we have them at least compiled, and hopefully we can get to all of them. So with that, I'd like to kick it off by passing over to our first speaker, Javier Luengo Garrido. Javier is the organizing strategist at ACLU, Massachusetts. He joined in 2017, coordinating the Immigrant Protection Project. Javier's current work focuses on multiple issues across the organization, spanning from racial justice to technology and civil rights. He is based in Western Massachusetts and works on municipal and statewide advocacy and campaigns. His extensive experience working with municipal entities will really inform his talk today. Prior to joining ACLU, Javier served as a liaison, interpreter, and education specialist support for the Northampton school system. Please join me in giving Javier a warm welcome.
Hey, everybody. Everybody can hear me?
Good.
Thanks, everybody, for being here. Thanks to Mincam for putting this event together. I know that people here are busy people, and I appreciate that every one of you is taking time to be able to come to this event. My role at the ACLU, I wear many hats. I'm a lobbyist for the organization. So I lobby elected officials at the legislature, I run campaigns, and I specialize in municipal work. That's one of the things that I do. And the ACLU work at the municipal level started around 9 years ago. And the way how it goes is that when we have a big piece of legislation at the State House, we usually have a smaller version that can be passed as an ordinance in a municipality. For example, we have at the state level, we have the Safe Communities Act. And what we did with that in the municipal level, we passed welcoming city ordinances that sort of ended the collaboration between local police enforcement in different municipalities and ICE. We have another piece of legislation, which is the facial surveillance legislation that regulates the use of facial surveillance technology. And we passed bans on facial surveillance in different municipalities like Springfield, Cambridge, Northampton, East Hampton, Worcester. So for years, the work at the municipal level has shown us that many times, when we're talking about engagement of community members, many times, during the Trump administration, people felt really lost because of all what was happening at the federal level. And many people felt unable to be able to engage for real and make changes for real because everything was happening at the federal level. But what we ended up learning was that there were many things that local activists were able to do at their communities to be able to make changes, to be able to advocate for communities, to be able to advocate for different goals, sustainability, racial equality, police accountability. And one of those things, for example, was the fact that in Northampton, Northampton created the first Department of Community Care that came out of mobilization and hard advocacy by community activists. And the reason why I'm talking about all this is that many times we feel that our communities are stuck and we don't know what to do. And the reality, and we were talking about this during the prep meeting that we had for this event, having our community members understanding the municipal structure, the quirks, the idiosyncrasy of their cities or town is key. It's a lot of work at the same time. I work in around 20 different cities and towns, and each city and town has their own idiosyncrasy, their own ways to do things. Understanding, for example, when we talk about a strategy and advocacy, understand if we're dealing with a municipality that has a strong mayor or a weak mayor, a strong council. when we're talking about committees, when we're talking about city council, when we're talking about city departments, and players that can make decisions, and committees and commissions and boards that can make different decisions. Understanding that is fundamental. With the ACLU, we have developed a couple of workshops that we have done for the last year in relationship to giving people sort of an introductory workshop to municipal work. And one of the things that we have seen constantly, it's people being amazed that, oh, Cambridge doesn't function similarly to Worcester. Worcester has, for example, has a mayor, but the mayor in Worcester is equivalent to the city council president because Worcester has a city manager. And all of a sudden people, well, my city doesn't have a city manager, it has a mayor. Do they have the same power? Well, depends. It's complicated. All of a sudden you start having all these answers that are not satisfactory to people. And being able to look for the proper information to understand your municipality and your town and the bodies that are deciding things in your municipality and town is key. One of the first places where we look and community members look, it's websites, city websites. City websites are a labyrinth for many people. I always say that if you have to do the more than 3 or 4 clicks to be able to get any piece of information in your municipal website, that's a bad municipal website, right? And many times I have gone, and I'm somebody who works on this, right? And sometimes takes me 15 minutes to find something, to find an ordinance, to be able to find when the meetings of these elected bodies are going to happen, or where the agenda is, or the minutes are, right? So it's really important for activists to be able to get acquainted, for better or worse, with the website in the municipality, right? Many times municipalities have set up portals for people to be able to submit public record requests. People should know that by law, you just sending an email to the city clerk or the mayor or the police chief, that amounts to a public record request. You're not required by law to have to submit anything to a city portal. It's certain that the way how city portals manage information, you would be able to go to your account, you would be able to see all your public record requests, you would be able to see all the emails that you have sent back and forth. Helps a lot. But the reality is that people should not feel scared or not wanting to do it just because how the portal functions, right? And the problem with municipal access and participation comes down a lot to technological literacy, access to the technology, and access to the information. With COVID, we saw this incredibly revolutionary change in how public meetings were run. All of a sudden, meetings that usually have 20, 30 people attending, maybe start having 120 people, 200 people attending. And that spoke a lot about the level of engagement that community members would have. In some cities and towns, we saw that during the budget process, more than 500 to 800 people would show up to testify. And this made things more complicated for the elected body, because what they did, they shrink, for example, in some municipalities, they shrink the public speaking time from 3 minutes per person to 2 minutes, and sometimes even lower. So there's a lot of pieces that we need to understand if we are going to give testimony in one of these elected bodies that is subject to open meeting. So they need a quorum, they need a minimum number to be able to operate. They need to post the meeting 48 hours ahead at least for the meeting to happen. We need to be cognizant of what's going on with that elected body when we're giving our statement, right? If we know it's going to be 2 minutes or 3 minutes or 1 minute, the kind of testimony is going to change dramatically. And the level of engagement also changed dramatically because all of a sudden, people feel that what I'm going to say in 2 minutes or what I'm going to say in 1 minute, that is actually going to change people's minds. Let me tell you a secret that everybody knows. Most of the time, when a council comes to vote something, they already know what they're voting for. They already know. Elected bodies, many times when they are heading to a vote, such as city council vote, they already know what they're voting for. So if anything that I'm letting you here with, I would say it's really important, it's highly important to be able to meet with your elected officials, to be able to meet with those who take decisions in your towns and cities. Grab a coffee. My boss, Laura Rotola, at the ACLU also always said that I should have a separated budget just for coffee. But let me tell you, building good rapport with elected officials and people in charge of different boards, citywide and statewide, is fundamental for a good working relationship. Many times when you're not going to be able to find information and you have good rapport with an elected official or somebody who works on one of those boards, you can actually reach out and ask for that material. That's a really good option, having in mind how the public record request works, right? Which, you have to wait 10 days and see if they answer. If they don't answer, if they answer, they can ask for an extension of time, which usually is 20 days. And all of a sudden, when you needed the information for a month ago, becomes this big, huge deal. And many times, it may be the case that the information that you get is not what you ask for, or is partially what you ask for, and you have to appeal to the Secretary of the Commonwealth. And that extends even further the timeline of the public record request. And many times, sadly, you may find that the municipality is not responsive at all and is not complying. And a lot of a fair amount of lawsuits that we have as ACLU are related to the state federal government not fulfilling public record requests. I think we just came out of a lawsuit with DHS, the Department of Homeland Security, in relation to public record. The same with a couple of sheriff departments. So being able to understand how the flow of information, how hard or not is to get that information, and there is ways to get that information without having to wait, it's fundamental. A common theme when we were prepping for this event was that we need to transition from exciting advocacy to exciting, well-informed strategic advocacy. And I think that's the key. That's the key. And this is the reason why I'm talking about all these different things, because all these pieces, if you think about that, as advocates that every one of you is, you want to be able to be an expert on this. You want to be able to be an expert in your municipality. State organizations, usually they have somebody, an advocate in different cities that they know the landscape. They know the power, they have done the power mapping. And they can understand really well how the dynamic work, who is the decider, and how things can get done. Many times when we're passing legislation in cities and towns, or we're working with a board who is part of the city, building rapport and having that relationship and being able to have access to that people, just to be able to question and to ask questions in a way that is going to be more conducive to something positive, it's fundamental, right? Also, as an immigrant myself, I have to say that in my position, when I have been dealing with municipalities that are, when we passed the Welcoming City Ordinance, which sort of cut the sharing of information between local police informants and ICE, you would hear comments in public hearings such as, immigrants come here with all these diseases, exotic diseases. I'm an immigrant and I have to deal with that. But the question is, do I get self-righteous? Do I get mad about it? Or that's not the point. That's not the point for me. The point, what is going to change my community, the life of my community, every day of my community, right? And as advocates, many times, to be able to get what we want and to be able to move the process ahead, sometimes we want to argue with somebody. Sometimes we may get frustrated with people. But many times we need to be cognizant that keeping the relationship to be able to move things forward is fundamental. That many times it's not about us, it's about the bigger picture and also the bigger goal. And what we want, and even more when we're representing an organization, even if we're not paid staff, many times when we are talking on behalf of a group, or we're talking on behalf of an affected community, and I'm going to speak for myself, my personal feelings are secondary, because what is important from the strategic point of view is to get done what is needed to be done. And finding those people in the municipality, in the state, in different boards that are going to be accomplices with us, that they want the change that we want to see. It may be that we need to educate them. That happens so much, right? You're talking with somebody who passed a ban on the use of facial surveillance technology in Springfield. How many people were thinking in Springfield about facial surveillance? Nobody. What happened after? The main sponsor, who was the champion of that, became a state rep because he was so good on it. The secondary sponsor, Adam Gomez, became a state senator. And they were able to talk about what they have done because they became so well acquainted with the issue and the way how they champion it, that they were able to talk about it. And that's also our responsibility, right? To bring up those who can make changes and make decisions, and inform them, educate them, and encourage them, and give them cover too. Let me tell you that. Giving cover to elected officials and giving cover in a way that people can make those tough decisions because are important, because are necessary. It's fundamental, because we want our communities to be able to move forward. And we should be the agents that are working on that. Lily, I don't know if I'm going over time. I'm looking at you.
No, it's all good. You're about right at time. So if you have a couple closing remarks or anything, let me know. Go for it.
Perfect. And I see a couple of questions, and should I ignore the question or should I just wait?
Yeah, just wait on the questions. We'll answer those at the end. But please do continue putting them in the chat, folks. Thank you.
So, sorry, Shelby Lee, from wherever you are. And you know, and I think the years that I have been working with the ACLU in relationship to understand the factors that play through a campaign. We did Know Your Sheriff last year, that ended up with, I don't know if anybody here is familiar with Thomas Hodgson, Sheriff Thomas Hodgson. Probably one of the most despicable sheriffs in the US. And we did a campaign called Know Your Sheriff because we learned that people didn't even know that the sheriff served for 6 years and was accountable to nobody but the voters. And that education campaign had a great impact on people being able to understand the role. And the amount of people voting was massive, that all of a sudden we have a new sheriff in Bristol. We have a new sheriff in Barnstable. Candidates that run on the basis of no collaboration with ICE in targeting of immigrant communities. Our community, when informed, can move mountains. But being able to educate and inform our community takes time, empathy, patience, and many times we have to be able to understand that it's not going to happen overnight.
Wonderful. Thank you, Javier. That was really wonderful. I loved your point about going beyond engaged advocacy into well-informed and strategic advocacy. You know, that's MCAN's sweet spot, is providing those resources and tools to advocates so that we can effectively push for change. So thank you, Javier. Next up, our panelist joins us from Middleborough's municipal utility, Middleborough Gas and Electric Department. Jackie Crowley has been with Middleborough Gas and Electric since 2006, first as the power supply manager, and has served as the general manager since 2012. Ms. Crowley has worked in the energy industry for nearly 4 decades and has touched many areas of the industry in that time. Her experience includes electric and natural gas utility operations, energy marketing, natural gas supply, regulatory affairs, strategic planning, renewable energy resource development. The list goes on. In 2021, MCAN's MLP scorecard, in the MCAN MLP scorecard, MGED scored in the top 10 for MLPs in the transparency and community engagement section. So I'll pass the mic over to Jackie. Take it away. Oh, and you're on mute. Always a Zoom trouble.
Yes.
There you go.
Thank you. And I'm honored to be in this company. And Javier, I'm so impressed with the work that you've managed to accomplish in a challenging time when we all have to fight for people's rights on a daily basis. I'm going to give a little bit of a background on the subject that we are discussing today about transparency with a little information. This is, by the way, all my opinion that I'm sharing. It is not the opinion of my Board of Commissioners, although they have been terrifically supportive of the way that we've operated for the time that I've been at Middleborough Gas and Electric. When I joined Middleborough Gas and Electric in 2006, and then I became the interim GM in 2012, I quickly realized that the most important first step was to get to know the community that we serve. And it's very different from some of the other municipal light plant communities. And we have a lot of low and moderate income renters, very, very spread out. We cover 100 square miles. We're the largest municipal light plant in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts and among the largest in New England. And that really informs a lot of the work that we have to do. We have a wide range of ages among our customers, a wide range of technology comfort levels, and we've had to accommodate. We really have to plan long-term to accommodate everybody's needs. That's been very important. On the when I came in, the previous GM had a very challenging time with transparency and communications. And there was a lot of ill will at the time against his leadership and against Middleborough Gas and Electric. It really harmed our credibility in the community, which makes it very hard to get your business done. And most of virtually all of the criticism of us was really unfair because we do a great job. And our first priority, our first job is always going to be performance, reliability. And we do serve a very challenging service territory. We managed in the first year that I was the GM to have major hurricanes and major blizzards that at one point took out about 75% of our electric customers. So that those were really unusual events back in 2012, 2013 timeframe that have had a very big impact on the way that I've managed Middleborough Gas and Electric and the way we prioritize, where we put our resources. We provide these essential services of natural gas and electric to about 6,000 gas customers in Middleborough alone and 17,000 customers for electric in Middleborough and the neighboring town of Lakeville. And these essential services are critical to human safety, so that's always been the driver. And we also operate under Chapter 164 in Massachusetts General Law, which is just a remarkably visionary document that focuses on prioritizing the importance of that customer safety for essential services. It prioritizes the ongoing stability of the entity, and it's visionary in separating the operation literally audit-wise from town politics, which I think was very critical. And Middleborough Gas and Electric, for example, was under the Board of Selectmen up until the mid-'80s, when they realized that the town's finances were causing some people to have an interest in using these essential services of gas and electricity in order to channel some funds into the town's coffers. And Chapter 164 is very, very clear about there needing to be no regressive taxes in that manner, so that at the time they determined that they would create a separate elected board of for the light plant. And the light plant also covers the gas distribution system as well. And we have 5 commissioners, which I think is a really helpful number of commissioners. I would be very frustrated if I had only 3, because it's important to get differences of opinion and to really be able to talk things out. I am grateful that we've had an extremely supportive board during the time of my tenure. And, the general manager is kind of like a CEO reporting to an elected board, but you're also, as the general manager, responsible for, oh Lord, okay. I have a hard stop at one point, but I'll get back in about 10 minutes because my computer keeps wanting to restart. Anyway, the general manager is like a CEO with that elected board, but we're also responsible for long lists of state and federal agency federal agency reporting requirements, particularly on the gas side. We have layers on layers on layers of reports that we file on a monthly and quarterly and annual basis. And the number increased exponentially after the Merrimack Valley crisis. And so we support, making sure that we can provide the correct information to meet all of our obligations. But for a small municipal light system and a small municipal gas system, it really is a challenge. But that's kind of our top priority as well. We're also a transmission owner, so that we answer to many more entities since we're part of the electric grid. Middleborough does manage its own power and gas supply portfolios. We are, on our power side, 65% carbon free at this point, and we were last year as well. And overall, 18% of the 100% is from renewable resources. Our goal has been to increase the percentage of renewable resources every year while maintaining and growing our carbon-free percentages as well. So, we took that very seriously early on. I will say we've had a terrific collaboration in the past 10 years with first the Green Energy Committee in Middleborough, and Jeff Stevens was an integral part of promoting energy efficiency. And then Sustainable Middleborough has really taken a very big step in committing a lot of resources, a lot of energy. I want to recognize Kimberly French, Dodie Adkins-Perry, and Sandra Smiley as being people who have just been so consistent about participating in our meetings, about observing things, about asking questions. It's become a regular part of our meeting that we do anticipate we'll be getting feedback and sharing information. We also have a long list of folks that we contact prior to meetings to share our agenda and meeting materials, and provide meeting materials that are used at the meeting after the meeting as well, so that we can continue having that dialogue. I will say that initially, it was when those folks started coming to our meetings and started questioning some of our practices. It is very easy to start to feel threatened, or to feel like you're being criticized for things that are important and that we're really working towards. But, when our primary focus is on reliability, and service to our customers, you know, you feel like you're being questioned for your ability to perform those important functions. But I think that we made the realization, and this was a long time ago, that these are our customers, and these are people that, you know, we're actually in agreement with the goals of Sustainable Middleborough and with the earlier Green Energy Committee. We want to support progress to their, you know, their goals, so that it became, you know, we stopped feeling stressed and threatened, and we made a real effort to create a conversation about these things and to start to question ourselves about, well, we think we can't do this. Why can't we do this? We really could do this. And so our commissioners have been very supportive of this move, because they've always wanted to champion anything that meets the needs of our customers, but particularly things that work us towards energy efficiency. I will say, because of the kind of community we serve, that our costs are, it's very important for us to maintain low and reasonable costs for our customers, for the businesses that we're trying to attract to our community. So that is a priority as well. We also, and you know, this is early on, our commissioners committed to the state's targets for decarbonization. And they did this voluntarily before it had been passed into law. And so we've been working in that direction for a very long time. And that's why I think we have such good numbers right now. We also didn't feel like, you know, because the first big target for munis is 2030, why would you wait until 2030 to do that? We have been retiring our environmental attributes, the RECs, ever since, you know, we made that commitment. And it worries me sometimes because they're worth a lot. And you do sort of feel like this is money that you're flushing down a toilet that you could be using for the benefit of your customers. Some of our peers are using those funds to add more renewable, to try to advance for that 2030 target. But, you know, we felt that it was important to start showing that commitment now. We also have been committed to trying to retain the legitimacy of the kilowatt hours, the energy attribute, as well as the environmental attribute that goes with it. So we're not selling expensive, valuable stuff and buying wind RECs from Texas or from another part of the country. We're really trying to benefit our local community and New England in general. The recent successes that we've seen, and a lot of these are from things that were, you know, suggested by Sustainable Middleborough. We've recently established a low and moderate income discounted rate for our customers. We have expanded EV charging using some grant funding, but some utility funding, both for fast chargers and for the more traditional chargers. We have Sustainable Middleborough has produced an excellent guide to local, state, and federal resources available now that is a really nice, comprehensive piece of work. And we have also updated our rebates and added tiered payouts for energy efficiency investments for low and moderate income customers. We are continuing to work on a zero or low interest loan program for energy upgrades for our customers as well. That's been a very frustrating process. And we were frustrated with the administration change because we were pretty far along with a program that was being developed within the state that municipal light plants would have been participating in a low and zero interest loan program. And then with the administration change, it completely lost all momentum. So we're really trying to regain that. And have been meeting with banks now for a while, but it's taking a little bit longer to get that in place. I did just recently attend the Northeast Public Power Association annual meeting, and we had a terrific presentation on grant funds that are going to be available from the federal government through the Inflation Reduction Act and some other recent legislation. And we're at a point now where there's a little bit of a choke. You know, there are tax savings available if you pay taxes on investing in clean energy, EVs, the whole bit. The IRS is still interpreting some of that, but the monies, and these are very substantial funds that are being given to the states to trickle down to customers, states haven't fully developed those programs yet. And that's what we're really enthusiastic about, because that will give us a chance to kind of turbocharge our promotion of improved energy efficiency, insulation, transition to beneficial electrification. So, you know, we're diligently working to try to develop new programs that will speak to those goals. We've also, in the past 10 years, really expanded our communications. I am sad to say our website is not my favorite thing in the world. It is not as user-friendly as it should be, but you know, we are not slick. We are not a corporation. We are not, so that developing a good, solid website that has all the information that we need to provide to people for all the different reasons, including our outage map and communications, it's very, very challenging for us. So we use the kind of portals that are designed for municipal entities at a reasonable price so that we don't end up incurring crazy costs. I think the fact that you have to constantly update these things is frustrating for us, because you put in a ton of time and money, and then within a short period of time, you're needing to update it again. A good thing is we've had a lot of turnover among our staff. Like a lot of municipal light plants, we have staff who've, you know, dedicated 25, 30, 35, 40 years of their working life to the citizens of Middleborough and Lakeville. You know, the majority of our employees actually live within our service territories. They have very deep ties. But it's the point I wanted to make is that we've hired some young people who are really good with tech, which is good because I'm really terrible with tech. And so I need my hand held for a lot of these things. But we plan to have podcasts that we're going to start promoting on energy issues. We use emails, Facebook, texts, Instagram. We have digital newsletters. We have virtual meetings where we talk about subjects of interest to our customers. We have recordings of past virtual meetings that they can access, in-person seminars. We had a youth program that we just had earlier this year on electric safety and gas safety. We participated in the town-wide cooler fair that Kimberly French really spearheaded. That was a huge success and brought in a lot of folks from the high school. And we're also working with our neighbor, Taunton Municipal Light Plant, on developing a day program on beneficial electrification, because more and more we find that there are a lot of contractors out there talking to our customers who have misinformation about electrification. And so we really want to try to be straightforward and invest time and energy in programs that are going to get the best benefit for the broadest group of our customers. I could go on and on as the folks from Sustainable Middleborough will tell you, as I do at our monthly meetings that are open to the public and televised. So I'll cut it short there, and I'll look forward to questions and discussion.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Jackie. And I'm glad that we didn't unexpectedly lose you in the middle of it from the tech issues. I really love the framing that you had around how, maybe that initial interaction with the community groups maybe cause a little bristling, but then viewing it and framing it as a conversation and a way to have meeting mutually beneficial goals. And just naming the things that have come out of that collaboration as direct action is really exciting, and is something other MLP advocacy groups can take with them, knowing that it is possible. So thank you, Jackie. Our final panelist this evening is Sudie Smaller. Sudie is the co-founder of Breathe Clean North Shore, an advocacy group formed out of opposition to the Peabody Peaker, a dirty peaking power facility under construction in an area of Peabody surrounded by environmental justice communities. As Peabody residents, Sudi, along with her husband Ron, have been vigilant advocates pushing for change within the Peabody Municipal Light Plant, and have attended most, if not all, of the light board meetings since the news of the Peabody Peaker first broke. Sudi has prepared some slides for us, which I'm going to share my screen now. And Sudi, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Lily. I'm struck by some of the comments that I heard from our featured speakers. Idiosyncrasy, every community, it's different. It's an individual path. I agree completely with Javier. And it's complicated. And what I'm going to try to do is give you a sense of what we encountered. And hopefully that will help you. So we can get started, Lily. Yes, this was me after the pandemic. Not much going on here. I woke up to the opportunity to advocate against this new fossil fuel peaker plant and started to leverage my position as a resident of the municipal light community and a recent retiree with new time and energy on my hands. That's when Breathe Clean North Shore was born. I love the Red Rebel Brigade, and I want to thank them, Extinction Rebellion, as well as MCAN, Slingshot, Mass 350, SAFE, and many other groups for supporting our Stop Peabody Peaker campaign. The past few years I've spent working to stop the Peabody Peaker have given me a crash course in engaging with the Peabody Municipal Light Plant and deep insight into the needs for greater transparency and community engagement from MLPs and other public entities. It was the appalling lack of transparency that kept us motivated. This is a timeline of some of the actions we took. Gathering information, learning what the code names were and what entities had levers of influence. We figured it out despite that there were no PMLP meeting minutes available on their website, and that none of their meetings were being videotaped or audio recorded. We learned what was required of the MLPs to adhere to the open meeting law, posting agendas at least 48 hours in advance, posting meeting minutes the Friday before the next monthly meeting. Some information such as executive minutes is strategic to keep closed, but MLPs are required to release this information after a reasonable time frame when the contents are no longer sensitive. My husband Ron and I got them to first start releasing these old session minutes. Eventually, we hope these executive session minutes will also be posted to the website. Right now, they're by request in person. MWIC asked us to leave the petition with the gate guard, and they have never communicated directly with us. It was because of our advocacy that MWIC called a 6-week pause. And it was during that pause that MWIC met for the first time with Danvers officials. The plant is adjacent to an environmental justice area in Danvers. During the pause, we learned that MWIC's plans for the peaker had changed, including canceling plans for a 200,000-gallon oil tank, using urea instead of ammonia, burning a gas hydrogen blend by 2030, and closing Peabody's oldest peaker in 2026. It was all news to us, and we take those plans with a grain of salt. We continue to keep a watchful eye on MWIC and PMLP proceedings to ensure these plans are acted on. To the interconnected nature of municipal government, we also have started attending other public meetings like the Peabody Conservation Commission in order to know what is being planned in the city's 11 environmental justice areas. We were successful in our first challenge via the open meeting law, but apparently we were also responsible for a PMLP commissioner stepping down mid-term. The commissioner said, increased pressure from environmental activists to shut down a new peaker power plant being built in Peabody and to make PMLP's energy portfolio less reliant on fossil fuel had worn him down. Our advocacy not only got a commissioner to step down who wasn't ready to take on the changes necessary, but we were able to elect one of our own. BCNS member and candidate Tracy Valetti was elected. Finally, some diversity on the all-white male commission. Tracy is running this year for the remainder of the 2-year term and is being challenged by a former commissioner of 24 years who was ousted in the last election. It's been obvious, you can change the slide, please, that the commission would rather have not had us participate in these public meetings, but we weren't expecting these feelings to be picked up on the microphone. So we posted what happened on social media, and we were not anticipating this kind of a response. The commission did not like us highlighting their comments caught on mic. In response, they refused to let BCNS or our local TV channel PATV use their usual microphones. They were mysteriously missing at the next commission meeting. We filed this grievance with the Attorney General's office under an open meeting law violation, but were denied review. There remains no video or audio coverage of the PMLP Commission's regular meetings. After complaining about the Commission's continued lack of transparency, primarily not sharing their budget, PMLP offered to hold a quarterly energy forum with PMLP administration. They would not allow us to record the forum. After 2 such meetings, they canceled the forum and eventually replaced it with an online forum. This sounds great in theory, but the stated response time is 6 weeks. Not very timely for some basic questions we want answers to. In hopes of giving you some context, I thought I'd share this 1-minute clip of my husband at a commission meeting advocating for more representation at the public forums. It's too bad that a person steps in to block the view. Thank you, Ron Smaller. If you could play this.
You say is our light plant?
I just want to correct you on that. Joe is in communication with us about these meetings that you have.
Okay,
So
great.
it's not like we're disconnected from it. I just want to make that point clear.
Okay, well, that's good to know.
Yeah, and
Yeah, we have these. We get these every year.
Yeah, so
What is that?
This is a copy of what you guys talked about last night.
Oh, okay, I have not seen that.
there's no,
Because because-
disconnection. That's the point I want to
Okay,
make.
because, okay, I'm sorry. There was somebody taking notes there because there
No,
was,
that was my prepared notes
Yeah.
to discuss this.
that was your notes from that you stated in the beginning?
Yes.
Is there anything about what the public said in that?
Not in that, no.
Okay, well, that's what I'm concerned. I think, like I said, it's our PMLP, and I think that it would be helpful. You're elected by the people, and it would be helpful for you to hear what the people have to say. I'm not saying everybody has to be at every meeting,
Yeah.
but it's been disappointing for 2 meetings that no one has come. And that's wonderful that Joe fills you in, but I still think it would be nice if someone came. That's it. That's my last comment.
Thank you. We can change the slide. After the missing microphone episode, the PMLP published new public participation rules and distributed them on the reverse side of the paper meeting agenda, but not on the website. They announced the public comment period would be changed to restrict comments about items that were on that night's meeting agenda. We had previously asked that the public comment period be moved later in the meeting schedule so we could comment on issues brought up at the meeting and not have to wait for minutes to be released a month later. The public comment period continues to be held early in the meeting before any discussion takes place. There's been no information on the violation of the start date of the new plant. MWIC received 2 extensions and has not met the June 2023 deadline for completing the plant and providing capacity to ISO New England. What does that mean? How do we learn more? Are we being fined? How much? The best sense we can get of the construction timeline is physically visiting the site and looking through the chain link fence. We're watching the smokestack progress. This should not be the state, should not be the case. So what are the challenges and lessons that we have learned? The loss of microphones and video recording equipment. We definitely don't view PMLP's actions as justified. However, moving forward, we've been more strategic in our public criticisms in hopes of mending and building the relationship between the commission and our group. If we want to go forward in any way, that's imperative. Public comment periods will remain a work in process that we're hoping to see improve. Engaging with the PMLP is just one part of what we've done at BCNS. I want to provide information I hope will be useful to other MLP residents looking to start engaging with their Muni. We have been successful in the stepping down of an old guard commissioner and the election of an advocate of our own, releasing of historical executive session minutes, increased awareness of PMLP that we're expecting them to follow the open meeting law to the T, and direct answers to a couple of dozen questions we posed about the budget once we received a working copy. BCNS's role as a watchdog continues to be a priority. Not just a PMLP watchdog, we're also watching MWIC, ISO New England, FERC, and the Healy administration. Municipal light plants are governed institutions. They're ours. Many folks aren't aware of how much power we have as citizens to advocate for change in our municipal utilities. Some light boards haven't seen much public engagement in many years, but I believe we can change that. Thank you.
Thank you, Sudi. That was really wonderful, and it was nice to see the Peabody Peaker fight condensed into just a couple minutes because it's been a long one.
Yes.
Thank you to all of our speakers. I would like to open it up to a little bit of a panel discussion so that we can all converse over some different thoughts. What drew me first to the work of MCAN and the MLP landscape is my excitement around public power, and that these are publicly governed institutions and that the citizens actually do have power over their utility or with their utility. As someone with an investor-owned utility myself, I find myself feeling jealous when I'm doing my MLP research for our MLP scorecard over just how much capabilities lie within the citizens of MLP communities. They are owned and operated for and by the people. I'd love to dive into a discussion. So to kick us off, a question that's come to mind for me is, from each of you, what do you see as the most powerful tool or framing that advocates can use in working to advance transparency and community engagement in their MLPs? And anyone's welcome to kick us off.
I can start because it's worked well in our case. And I think that, we had a really painful time with my predecessor for a period, and he had somehow gotten the wrong idea about transparency and was schooled by, some local citizens, but also some the town treasurer, for example. And I think, I view myself as a public servant, and I think that there are many people in the business world, in the government, who don't entirely embrace that. And for me, it was a good journey to get to that public servant status. And so I realized that we have nothing to hide. So, I mean, there is information that we have to maintain as confidential. We're very careful about our customer information. We've actually gone through a smart meter project, and we're really carefully protecting our customers' information. We don't want it to be monetized in any way for other services. So, we are thoughtful about that, but we got somebody who's very knowledgeable about the requirements for agendas, for material. We're very prompt with our minutes. All of those are things that we learned from a very painful period of time. And so, that helped quite a bit. And the town media, I think, has been important as well, so that after a time when I think our credibility had suffered in the community, I think we've more than established it again. And that was, really important to us. But I think a lot of it is this sense that, you are a public entity, and that you are a servant, and that your commitment is to the community that you serve.
Thank you, Jackie. Yeah, I think for definitely in my experience in watching different MLPs operate, the ones that seem to be the most successful are the ones who really understand the ins and outs of all the various transparency laws that need to be followed, and also what's expected and how to make sure that happens. And it could start as a painful process, but I'm glad that you are where you are now, and you've taken or found your way back to being in a favorable opinion of the Middleborough folks. Sudi or Javier, do you have any ideas you'd like to share on tools that advocates could utilize in advancing transparency and community engagement?
So, two things. The first one, Sudi, I love your PowerPoint, by the way. And I truthfully say that, and to be able to file a complaint about a violation of open meeting law, first you need to know what possible violations can be, what the frame of violation, and how you can argument the violation when you make the complaint, right? Going to what you guys, you guys did. And I think that's the key to a lot of the stuff, right? I mean, I'm gonna keep hammering this. People, advocates, even if you're not being paid, but you love what you're advocating for, the love, it's the baseline of this. And after that, we need to keep building in expertise, like the one that Sudi has brought to the table. Sadly, the reality is we're gonna find a lot of roadblocks, like the way how you find in Peabody, that Jesus Christ. So and going back to what Jackie said, not all town cities or not MLPs are created equal, right? And that's something to take account. But what we can actually do is to be highly prepared to be able to navigate those, and being honest with you, with all these changes at the state level, and with the exceptions to the open meeting law that came down before from Governor Baker, and now that have gotten extended by the legislature until 2025, it's complicated because the level of people seeing and watching the businesses that are going on in the public sphere has grown exponentially. And we have to understand that many of these bodies were never held accountable before. Never. and you may say, no, never. Let me tell you that, never. So when all of a sudden meetings that maybe 1 or 2 people show up, you have 20, 25, 40, 50, 100, 150. Many times public comment went by in 5 seconds. Anybody? No? Let's keep going. When you transition from that to an hour of public comment, 2 hours of public comment, and sometimes in those bodies that were never accountable for, they start being accountable, including for public records. And this is complicated because public records are things that we're entitled to get from municipalities, cities, and the state. We're entitled to. But many times we're going to find that there are people that think otherwise. And you're going to have to appeal because they are not complying with public record requests. And you're going to have to deal with personalities that may feel that accountability, in their definition, that it feels for them like a personal attack. And as advocates, we need to be able to navigate that. We need to be able to build upon that. And again, Sadie, I'm impressed by what you guys were able to do and had been able to do. Yes, all these, a huge amount of these elected bodies and boards are predominantly upper middle class, all white dudes. And I'm saying that as a brown immigrant. I always make a joke. I live in Northampton. I always make a joke that Northampton has this, we have this main thing that we export, which is upper middle class to rich white males that are going to tell you what to need to know, even if you did never ask for that. And in Massachusetts have a lot of those, but we do want more women. We do want more people, diverse people, to engage in politics. We want them to run for office. We want them being representative of our communities. If people making the decisions look like us, because they go through the same things that we go through, things are going to get better. But the only way to do it is doing the work that is happening in Pudi with Sudi, and the work that many of you are doing.
Right. Thank you, Javier. Studi, you're on mute, but it looks like you're saying something.
Okay, I'm here. I totally get the expert learner, strategic learner advocate that we need to be. I mean, 2.5 years ago, I didn't know what a peaker was. I didn't know what MWIC was. I didn't know what FERC was, any of this stuff. And it's been a long, educated process. And I think the more you educate yourself, the more of a strategic presence you can have. But the one thing that I found interesting in Peabody is we learned a lot by going to other meetings, especially now that we can do it virtually. To go to the local Conservation Commission meeting, that's how you find out where they're building something near wetlands, which tend to be in our city industrial areas. And it just opens the door and you become more respected or acknowledged by the community because you know what's going on in their neighborhood. And towards that end, for me, figuring out how to harness environmental justice areas, how to give them special attention is the biggest issue that we all are facing. How do you do that in 351 different communities in Massachusetts? So that's there.
Thank you, Sudi. That blends into a different question that has come up in the chat, and I think we can transition over to just general questions. So folks, if you have more questions, please continue to put them in the chat. One that came up earlier in the talk was, can someone please talk about any inherent tensions that can arise between an MLP and the town or city government? That's something I've been thinking about a lot. I know Sudi and the rest of the Breathe Clean North Shore crew have been thinking about a lot of the MLPs and the town administration being separated very intentionally under Chapter 164, but how that maybe leads to more tensions, has alleviated some, how they can work together. Just general thoughts around the relationship between MLPs and the rest of the municipal bodies.
I always want to let Jackie talk because she's got the positive example for us all. Because I part of my activism is getting tainted a little bit in that I feel like I'm always being negative. So I'm really interested in how do you do that?
You know, it's challenging, and there have been times in Middleborough's past where things were not going well. And in fact, you know, there was a period when there were politicians in town and people who ran and got on the board before my tenure who literally had a hit list of employees they wanted to get out for mostly personal reasons, for personal political reasons. And it was excruciating. And again, any kind of discord like that is going to damage your effectiveness and your credibility in the community. And you know, for us, I think, you know, for me, it's all about performance. It's all about reliability, safety, reasonable costs, and, you know, moving forward on our decarbonization goals. And I know a number of MLPs have had these challenges where their towns were trying to milk them for bigger pilot payments, bigger payments in lieu of taxes. And again, this can be perceived as a regressive tax. And I understand that towns are hurting, but if the, you know, foundation of your community is to attract development and to provide reasonable rates so that people can afford to live in rental apartments, and you know, you need to not be creating these artificial things. God knows ISO New England's processes are adding enough to everybody's electric bills and will be substantially for the next 10 to 15 years as we're going through this decarbonization period. But you know, you look at Merrimack, which had a recent vote on selling their municipal light plant, and they lost overwhelmingly on that kind of a transaction to, you know, get rid of this wonderful model that works so well for people. But yeah, you have to, you know, I'm planning on retiring before too long. And so I keep talking to our staff about how critically important it is to constantly read the community, advocate for the genie, listen, you know, be open to making changes in the way that we, you know, have that relationship and the programs that we offer our customers. But, you know, one of the really nice characteristics of Middleborough, and I think the folks on the call from town could endorse this, is it's a very common sense community. It's very frugal, so that we look at these programs and we get, some people will come to town, and especially people who are transplants, and say, why don't you offer all the programs that Eversource and National Grid are offering, all of the energy efficiency savings, all the upgrades, all the this, all the that. And you know, their rates are more than double our rates, for one thing. But the other thing, and I live in an Eversource territory, you know, some of those programs and the programs that we offer, we see that it's people of means taking advantage of everything we offer. And the programs are designed in a lot of cases so that if you are a renter, if you are a person of lower income, that, you know, you're not getting any opportunity to take advantage of some of these juicy incentives. So that we try to really be very thoughtful about what we're offering, and, you know, to have tiered incentives now for the regular ones we've been offering, and then some that are for lower income and middle income folks who qualify. You know, we want to put a lot more energy into that end of things, because I feel like that's a good message for the town, that we are going to protect your rate. We're going to make sure it's still reasonable for everybody, but we're going to try to, you know, create programs that benefit everybody. And we've had turnover in town government. I think every town has, so that we've been very fortunate to develop really positive relationships with the local town manager, the fire chief, the police chief, the select board. And I'll say too, from your comments, I'm the first woman GM that Middleborough's ever had. And in the time that I've been the GM, we've had multiple women. And in fact, we've had a woman chair of our commission now for the last couple of years, and a previous year before that. And our board could not be more pleased at this, shift in people serving, something that, is demanding, but it's important that we get lots of opinions, lots of support on this agenda that we've got. And we're not involved at the Peabody Peaker, by the way. We are involved with
Thank
some
goodness.
old MWEC projects, but we are not involved with this one. But, and I am not going to defend it, but this is an aside, but I'm very worried about the direction of the supply stack for electric energy resources in New England. I think that, we are headed in a very dangerous direction as we're going through this transition with decarbonization. And our first concern should always be safety and reliability for customers, because the people who will suffer the most are not the people who can afford a generator. It's going to be our low and middle income renters. And so we really need to be, and I think about those folks as my gas customers too. The state is on a very big anti-gas, agenda, but a huge number of our gas customers are low income and moderate income people. They have to think in terms of, unintended consequences of their political decisions, because those people will really suffer if they start to add additional fees to try to push people towards electrification when they have no control.
Yeah, thank you, Jackie. I know that with MCAN's work, it's so, with climate work generally, with clean energy work generally, it's very easy to fall into the false trap of, well, we can just put up solar panels and wind turbines and replace and shut down all the fossil fuel generators and flip the switch, and it's done just like that. But we'll still end up with an inequitable system. We'll still end up with a system that disproportionately harms those who can afford it the least. So I totally hear your concerns, and that's something MCAN and our partners are really being conscious of, is how do we equitably transition to clean energy? How do we make sure no one's getting left behind in this clean energy transition? Because it is very easy to do so if we just replace one for the other. It needs to be a much more comprehensive plan to transition, and it's an incredibly complex moment. I cannot emphasize enough how complex this moment is for the energy system. This is a 100-plus-year-old system that relied on very traditional fuel sources. We are making, square pegs into round holes, and we got to make it work because the climate crisis is here. But how do we do that in a way that makes it so everyone benefits and no one is left behind? Yeah, Sudi, I saw your hand go up.
I think that here in Peabody, part of our problem is how successful our light plant utility is. We're low rates, we have great service, but we have absolutely lousy community engagement. Everything is done. It's done, but it's done elsewhere than in the public. And I think that we have to, in our community at least, and maybe others, get our commission to adjust their mission and include in it community engagement. And I have to add this because, everybody, like we said, is idiosyncratic and different. Peabody has not had a sustainability committee like you had in Middleborough. We are not a green community. We don't have that voice available to us to challenge this very successful and well-run PMLP that just likes to operate like a little fiefdom. And they've been able to do that for many years by state law and tradition. And it's time for them to take a new look. And that's why I think the voters are voting for people who are alternatives to that, because most of our commissioners have been in 24, 30, 36 years in 6-year terms. Life is different now. It's different, much different than when 2015 the new peaker was proposed and then 8 years later acted on. That we need to be a little more current. I don't know how we do that, but it's essential that we look at where we're at now and what we're dealing with now, and then figure out the next step. And without a voice in the community to discuss that, it doesn't necessarily get done.
Thank you, Sudie. That's something I've been noticing definitely among the different MLPs, and which voices are heard, and what considerations outside rates and reliabilities are focused on, and how communities are able to advance things outside of rates and reliability, despite it not being in their mandate. And some have included sustainability language into mandates for their MLPs, so that those are intentionally considered. Definitely a changing landscape for sure. With the last few minutes of this, I want to just wrap up with one final question, which for each of you, what is the #1 thing you hope folks will take away from tonight's event and apply to their advocacy?
You can do it. It's not easy, but we can do it if you exercise your rights and you become an expert in the issue, so that people respect you, and you reach out to your people that in your community that you know. I think, we're a long way from where I would hope we would be, but we have made substantial progress through the support of organizations like MCAN and Slingshot and other groups. That it's not impossible. It's slow, but it's not impossible.
Slow but not impossible. Thank you, Sudie. Jackie, what are your thoughts? Final thoughts?
I hesitate to say this, but I feel like, Javier spoke to this and he's absolutely dead on. I completely agree that you have to become knowledgeable in your advocacy and really work hard at cracking that hard shell. But one thing that you shouldn't do is become really antagonistic from the get-go and come to meetings. And I mean, it was very frustrating in those early years before the state created its decarbonization roadmap. People come to meetings at the state level and they're appealing in such a heartfelt way. They're agitated, tears. They talk about my grandchildren, and sitting there and listening to it, I mean, it's agonizing, because everybody loves their grandchildren. Everybody wants a safe future. And so we shouldn't, and this was kind of the wake up moment for me. We should not be characterized as opposing climate change initiatives. It's not fair. It's not true. We are also looking at this path for decarbonization. But once you get to that, stop acting like you're opposing sides and start discussing it, and start talking about how you can advance to make progress that will be, reasonable and safe and sustainable for customers, and not impact the low income customers or environmental justice community customers, but do all the things we need to do to keep the lights on. So I think that, I just would hesitate to go right for the jugular and attack and I'm not saying that you did, Sudie. I'm just saying that I've been in situations where people do immediately raise it to that really antagonistic level, and you're not going to make any progress on your goals if you can't sit down and calmly discuss a plan ahead.
Thank you, Jackie. I'm hearing, relationship building first and foremost, and trying to, make sure that you can have those conversations and that they're not one-sided debates in the same room. I've been not necessarily in MLP conversations, but I've been definitely in rooms where it's folks who are just upset yelling at each other rather than working together to find a common solution that works. So definitely hearing that relationship building aspect. Thanks, Jackie. Javier, what do you have to say in your final thoughts?
Yeah, I would like to build. Sorry, Sudi, do you want to say something?
You're on mute. Sudi, you're on mute. There you are.
Sometimes you have to ruffle feathers. Sometimes you have to be in their face. I'm watching you. I mean, if we hadn't had that attitude over the last 2.5 years after we were not, I mean, let's go back. They were totally non-transparent about this new peaker. And that caused us to put a spotlight on them and say, what else are you not being transparent about? That I'd like to change that too, but that's our history with our light board and with our energy people in the city. So I just think we do need to all be able to talk about this, or we're not going to solve anything. And I pull myself back, but I also understand the level of frustration that spills over sometimes.
Oh yeah, I think that we can, it's strategy. There's strategy for having gentle, guided conversations that are very empathetic and working that way. But if you're not being met with the same energy, how are you supposed to be able to move forward if you're being blocked? I think ruffling feathers is justified in that way. But leading with the right foot forward and trying to build the relationship. And then if that's not working, if you're met with non-responsive emails and, just kind of the closed door, then you move on to the next stage of the strategy. I think just starting off from the bat with the ruffling feathers probably won't get you anywhere. But if you've tried and you go to the next step and it's like, okay, we're not getting anywhere, then we can start talking about ruffling some feathers to, get towards the goals that we need to get to. Before we wrap up, I want to make sure, Javier, you have a chance to give your final thoughts.
Sure. So I want to sort of build upon what Sudi said and Jackie said. In two things. The first one is every time that I'm sort of doing lobby or doing advocacy, working with municipal body or municipal elected officials, there is always the line between me feeling that I have all the right to feel indignated by what I'm finding, and the line about what's gonna advance the interest and the affected community that I'm advocating for, right? And I think that also enters what you're talking, Lily, which is a strategy. It's a range of things in extended range of time, right? And I do believe, City, that they were extremely egregious stuff going on in Putting. What you guys did was beautiful because it was needed, right? I would say that first, as advocates, we have the privilege to have the time to do this. We are in a privileged position, and we have to recognize that privilege, that others that are mainly being affected by work, and we're trying to help with our advocacy, don't have the time. Or maybe they are being affected by what we are trying to fix, but because of their situation, it's not in the top 5 or top 10 priorities of their life. They need to work, keep a job, feed their people, pay the rent, and make it to the end of the month. So having always that close to your heart, it's really good as a guidance for you to know, I'm in a point where I still can be strategic and build a relationship and move ahead in a way that is going to be conducive, or my gut reaction is taking the worst part of my advocacy strategy for me, right? That's one. And the other, recognizing that we are people with privilege because we have the time to be here, we have the time to be able to do this. And we haven't talked about this, and I'm gonna just I'm gonna throw this as the last thing. Because of that privilege, I think we're being called to uplift the voices of those who are actually being affected and bring those to the table. And in the same way how I was talking about advocacy with elected officials and education with elected officials and municipal employees, we are being called to also do education with our affected communities, uplift their voices, and create the conditions for them to be able to be part of the change.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for everything.
Thank you. Thank you to
Thank
all of
you.
our panelists this evening. This has been a really interesting discussion and lots of different perspectives being included, which I think is fantastic. And I hope that everyone comes away with some new ways of thinking about how we can advocate for increased transparency and more meaningful community engagement with our municipal light plants. So with that, I will close us out. This has been recorded and we will be posting it to our YouTube channel if you have other folks who are interested in taking a look. But have a great evening, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.